Hey, before we get into the interview, I want to make sure you're checking out the Sales Leadership Show. If you're interested in what great sales leaders do differently, or you want to become a sales leader, you can hear from the best in the world. This week on the Sales Leadership Show, I'm interviewing a VP of sales, and he started off his sales career doing door to door. But the uniqueness is he's 7'3". So he's a college basketball player, played pro for a short period of time. And we talk about his journey. And imagine somebody ringing your doorbell and you look out the little peephole and there's this 7'3" sales rep outside. It makes for a great interview. I'll be posting it early this week, so keep an eye out for it. And it'll also show up on the YouTube channel. All the interviews are put up there as well. A lot of people like to watch the video part, not sure why, and I post them on LinkedIn. Before we get into today's interview, make sure you're checking out our friends over at CoVideo. Video email is one of the things that's rocking right now. It fits into so many sales situations. Imagine little demos you want to give, or something on their website that you want to point out to them, or people you know in common, maybe. That video image enables somebody to get a little sense of who you are and how you can help them. So today's interview, we're going to be talking about caring. Now, that might seem soft and touchy-feely, but it is one of the key distinctions of great salespeople. They have to care about what they do. They have to be emotionally engaged in it. And if they're not, it just goes away. I mean, it doesn't seem to matter. Now, the challenge with caring is caring the right amount at the right time in the sales process. When you're prospecting, caring, all you need to do is, care that you're doing it. You don't want to get too emotionally attached because it's a lot of rejection or a lot of crawling before you run. But when you're competing for a deal, when you're trying to make a deal bigger, when you're trying to get the deal done, caring becomes a critical element of it. So we'll get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end, and I'll give everybody an update on what's going on in the courses. Here we go. Hey, Danny, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Well, I am in the software space. I have been in that space for about 15 years and started out at a sort of a large company, Oracle, doing sales there inside, then moved into field sales. And then for about the last 8 years or so, I've been at a company called Splunk and focus right now on the government side of things and helping customers get value out of the product. And before that, spent about 6.5 years covering sort of commercial accounts in the Mid-Atlantic area.
Yeah. Well, why sales? What do you like about sales?
The competitiveness, I think, is what I enjoy. I kind of grew up an athlete, so played soccer competitively through college, and just anything I do, I'm pretty competitive at. And so sales allows me to sort of push myself, work hard. And I like helping people. Honestly, a lot of sales is sort of driving success and seeing customers be successful, helping them. And I enjoy that side of it as well.
And what did you study in school, college?
So I went to school for marketing, a small school in Virginia called Longwood University, about, 6,000 kids now.
It's the third oldest.
What's that?
Longwood.
Third oldest?
Yeah, I checked it out before the interview.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. It used to be an all-girls school. It used to be a big teacher school, actually.
Was it?
And then they kind of created a nice business school. And so graduated with a marketing degree. And it's nice because that kind of gave me some insight into the creativity, I think, that you can use in sales. So it's been really beneficial in my career.
And that's it, because marketing is probably the closest most schools have to a sales education. It's not that close, but
Agreed. Yeah. And there's actually a sales class that I took there which was great. They really opened my eyes to the possibility of sales as a career, and I've seen a few more universities now offering sales as actually a major, I believe, which I commend them for. I'm actually going to look into it a little bit to see what curriculum they're teaching. Hopefully, they're focusing on the customer success side of things, and making it all about the other person.
And what was it like going into like a huge company like Oracle?
I was so young. I actually so I started for about 8 months in recruiting, IT recruiting, and I did that because I wanted to sort of understand the lingo, the vocabulary, how org structures were set up in companies. Um, and so that was a very small company. And then I went to Oracle, and I was kind of just in a dial for dollars sort of mode. So I was running campaigns for people who had quota, and my quota was just trying to find pipeline. Um, and it was great because starting that early, they had so much great training at a big company like that, and it was very go go go
Yeah,
during those days. So it was, I had to kind of work to stay at the front of the pack, and so I think got a lot of good foundational sort of
skills.
skills, exactly, and then a lot of great training from the
Yeah.
company. So
And then you moved to the outside. What was the major lesson there?
yeah, it's very different than inside for
Yeah,
sure.
it is.
Yeah. And there was some getting used to. When I first went into the outside role, I definitely had an adjustment of being in front of somebody and being able to talk to them about the value you can deliver versus over the phone. Over the phone, maybe you're a little more prepped, whereas in person, you have to be a little more, off the cuff, prepared. The other thing too that I figured out is when I first started sort of going from inside sales, because I was able to do like a little bit of a hybrid role, go into the field every once in a while. And when I went out, I noticed that I wasn't technically strong enough. So I think
Yeah.
I had to also increase my technical skills because you didn't always have an engineer with you. And so I needed to sort of maintain an ability to stay credible, be, intelligent, talking about the right stuff. And so that was also a big thing that I learned in going from that inside to outside sales. And I wouldn't trade it. I did it first going from Oracle inside sales to Oracle outside sales for about 3.5 years. And that really set me up for the foundation of the rocket ship that I joined in Splunk in around 2012.
And help us with that because I got to imagine without a CS degree, or maybe you had a natural curiosity about IT and software. How did you learn all of that?
A lot of listening.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think, I listened a lot because I just didn't know I didn't know, anything. I didn't know enough. And so any of the training that came out, and I always promoted this, any of the training that came out, I just dove into super deep and really sucked it up. And then any of the engineers that I knew were well regarded, I spent a lot of time with them and just
Yeah.
asked them questions. And when they were on demos, listened because, I sort of said to myself, hey, look, they're not always going to be with me. So the next meeting, I want to be able to take it to step 3 and then
Right.
have the engineer only come in and step 4 and maybe beyond, right? But the further that I could sort of take a cycle on my own, technically, the more self-service I was, and the less I needed to sort of rely on other people's schedules. And it wasn't like I wasn't trying to be a jerk. It was just a way to scale. I was able to to
Right.
to be a lot more effective that way.
That's it. Because a lot of people just stick with the four-legged sales call. And the problem is if you share the other two legs, then you're gated on their availability. And you may not have one assigned to you. You may have to, pick from a pool of people, and then you don't have the mojo. And I've seen too many reps tell me, "Oh, I don't want to learn the bitsy bitesy stuff. I want to stay at the." And it's like, well, good luck, unless you're having a lot of those meetings. You need to understand why they're buying you versus doing nothing or buying something else.
Yeah. And I always looked at it as you had to stand out because there's
Yes.
so many sort of, I'll call it average to below average salespeople out there who can just sort of step into something and then they change jobs every year and a half maybe and it's just because they're just going to the next versus if you are above average and you're able to prescribe. I love using the word prescribe. If you can prescribe to your customers how to do the right thing to be successful without relying on anybody else, which again, you always need that village. And I always talk about it. They're critical, but the further you can take it, you just stand out because there's so many average to below average, and putting that customer first, making sure success is critical, guiding them, prescribing to them. Just it's a lost art, I feel like, in the software world.
Now, Splunk has been on a rocket ship, but it probably wasn't like that when you arrived, was it?
It was pretty good. I mean, I joined, yeah, I joined right after the IPO. So they went IPO in April of 12. I joined in October of 12, and I mean, it was grindy for sure, but there was so much excitement, and like it was such a cool thing that we were doing. We were solving problems that people weren't able to solve before. So those early days, we had a few leads coming in, and it was definitely not totally dry, but there was a lot of prospecting too, early days, and pounding the phones and not being afraid of no, and I had basically the whole East Coast when I kind of first started. So flying on planes, all over the place. And then you kind of get into this rhythm. And once you get into that rhythm, it just goes. And that's, I think, what happened to us is we had, there's so many people even before I joined that really worked hard to get it to where it got to. And then all of a sudden, they had a great onboarding program. And then the market started to kind of catch on to this big data concept. We kind of got our mojo. We didn't change too many things, and that's when it just kept tumbling, kept rolling downhill. So it was a lot of fun. Still is a lot of fun.
What do you think separated you from kind of those okay reps? Because I'm sure you saw a lot of okay reps at a big company.
Yeah, I think I care a lot. I care a lot about what I am responsible for. Yeah. And I sort of try to maintain a very high level of service and just do the right thing, and not leave anyone kind of behind. I'll leave my customers behind, and I'm technical as well, so I can sort of go very far into a cycle without having to rely on anybody. So the combination of, somebody even told me I care too much sometimes, which I don't think you can care too much, but maybe. And then being technical, I think those two things have really allowed me to I don't have a very fortunate career in software.
Yeah, because the caring thing, I think it has to be applicable at different stages, right? When you're in the beauty contest, it's you against column B and C, you got to care a lot. But when you're prospecting, if you care too much, you're going to really burn yourself out pretty quick.
True. Yeah, it's a good point. I probably experienced that a little bit. I had what I like to call a sabbatical in 2019 from Splunk. Yeah. It wasn't a true sabbatical, but it was a sabbatical from Splunk. And I did. I just cared a lot, and I wasn't kind of getting it back, and it hurt. It did, man. It really hurt, and it messed me up pretty good mentally. And I'm so thankful to a lot of people to have kind of gotten back into a really good place. But you're right. There is a part where you could hurt yourself, probably. That's a good point.
Right. I mean, you see it in sports all the time, especially like in tennis. Somebody throws the racket, they just, you're right on the edge between control and no control.
Yeah. Yep.
And you have to kind of pull yourself back sometimes. Now, did you get to the point of burnout, or did you just need a break?
I think I potentially approached that burnout line. Yeah. I think I was working so hard, and I wanted to make it work so bad. And I got to a point where I was like, man, what did I do? What did I get myself into here? And actually the last year has been phenomenal, because, and I keep saying I'm going to write a blog on this, but for all my life, I've been really into working out, just I think through sports. And so physical fitness was a constant area that I could relieve the stress of of sales. And I still keep it up. I mean, I'm very, very active, but I've recently, thanks to actually an application, a guy that you should check out, this guy, Russ from Vision Pursue. I've worked in mental training now. So, in addition to physical fitness, I spend a lot of time on mental fitness and training myself mentally to handle different things and um, control the controllable. And there's a bunch of acronyms that, Russ uses to help you kind of, when you're in these situations, apply this acronym and get into a better mental state. So it's especially with all the stuff with COVID going on now, I think mental training is all the more important, in addition to your, the physical fitness side of things. So
Right, because you don't get a lot of the camaraderie, the lot of the, you know, sharing what's going wrong with other people. You're kind of isolated, even if you do have, I don't know if you have a family or not, but you don't have the amount of social interaction. Certainly not the travel.
you don't, and I've had to make it, and that's one of the other things. I've made it every day. I have an 8:30 call with people on my team. I don't manage anybody, but we're on the same team, covering the government. And every day at 8:30 we get on the phone, and it's not to talk business. It's just to say, how was your night? How you feeling? How does the day look? But it creates this office type atmosphere that
Yeah.
you had every day you went to the office, because you saw somebody at the water cooler, you saw somebody, walking in the hall, and you're able to chat. That's our sort of camaraderie right now. And it's been such a savior, because we're able to check on each other mentally, physically, cover for each other. It brings us to be a really tight unit. And it's been awesome. It's our motivation every day, getting up at 8:30 and doing it, but we all really enjoy it, and it's been very, very helpful.
And also, you're not covering the easiest customer in the world.
In the government, yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's definitely some challenges. And well, and the interesting thing with this role too now is that I'm a little out of direct line sales. So before I came, back here to Splunk, I was in direct line sales. So I was legal negotiations, chasing that purchase order, just grinding. Now I'm supporting reps, so a little bit of a specialist or overlay role, which has
Yeah.
been great for me to learn a new skill. But also just, same thing with reps, right? I mean, I remember as a rep, I wasn't necessarily always the easiest person to deal with. You try, because that you're gonna have to deal with them again. But so it's been interesting, sort of even just talking through dealing with different situations. But there's a lot of what I figured out is there's a lot of things I applied as a rep with my customers that I'm applying as a specialist to my customers who are now the reps.
Yeah.
A lot of similarities in terms of how we're trying to scale the business, in terms of how you deal with people, how you want to be dealt with. It's eerily, I mean, there's obviously a lot of differences too, but a lot of the same concepts apply, whether you're dealing with customers or you're dealing with reps as your customers. And it all comes back to being a good human, really, and doing the right thing.
Right. Because you have to have that rapport built before you need it.
Yep.
Because by the time you need it, if it's not there, there's a lot of finger pointing, it's too late to build it.
Agreed. Yeah, you got to
Yeah.
build that trust. Yep.
Yeah. And given that you're not a technical person by nature or by training, how do you keep up? Because most reps look at it as like, I don't want to write code. It's like, no, you don't have to write code, but you have to learn the vocabulary, learn the competition, learn the lockouts, the distinctions, and where they
Yeah.
fit and where they don't.
Yeah. I read a lot. I'm a huge reader, whether it's, and sometimes it's LinkedIn, which can suck you in. So, I have to be careful with that. But if you do LinkedIn right, there is a lot of good information on there to learn and educate yourself. I read a lot of, I'll call it just, like CIO magazine, or just industry sort of trade information. And then I read, sort of the non-technical stuff too, which I think is very important. Like I read the Wall Street Journal every single day. Just sort of understanding what's going on from everything from a political perspective down to, manufacturing, down to, finance. And that allows me to apply those concepts that I read in CIO magazine or the sort of technical sort of reads to the business side of things, which is another really important element, maybe the third of a successful sales rep: caring, technical, and then being able to apply your technology to the key business initiatives or strategies going on within the company. And a lot of that reading I do on the Wall Street Journal allows my brain to think both business and then shift it to the technology side when I'm reading about new technologies and what they are, and how they're helping the world. So
Right, because you have to be the translator of that technical value to how does it affect what they're doing, their mission.
yep.
Right. And when you sell it to the government, it's like they're not profit motive. There's more political motive, success motive, mission motive.
Correct.
And that can be different.
It can, yeah, and harder, I think, because
Much
when
harder.
because when I was covering publicly traded companies, I wouldn't say it was a little bit easier. They had a quarterly, earnings call. They had
It's more
usually
transparent.
they had an annual investors day. They had an annual report. And I'll tell this story because I think it's one of my best ones ever. So I actually, when I was covering a company, I went and attended their investor day. And I sat through their investor day in New York City and took meticulous notes the entire day from beginning to end. And then I came back home into the office and I applied all the strategic initiatives that they were focused on and how the software that I was selling would, be a catalyst for them accomplishing that quicker, or driving efficiencies with those initiatives. And I created a PowerPoint from that I then used as my sort of piece to go around this company and say, hey, look, this is why we are right to partner with on so many levels, because here's how we tie to your most critical strategic initiatives. And it was a pretty cool moment, sitting with a bunch of analysts, just kind of tech nerd, software sales guy, but really having it applied back was awesome. And a story I like to tell is a great way to really dial into the business side of things.
Right, because otherwise they put you in the who are you, what do you do commodity category, not what do I get out of it.
Correct.
That's why they spend money.
Yep. You got to show them why they care. You got to show them why it impacts them.
Yeah. And I'm sure you have visibility to a lot of reps. What do you see most reps doing wrong? Without outing anyone.
Yeah. No. I would say, probably not tying back to those initiatives. Why is it important? And again, it's harder in the government where I cover it now, but just not putting yourself almost in the customer's shoes and saying, hey, look, I've got a couple things that are coming in front of me right now to spend money on. How am I as the rep going to make that person want to spend money with me, and why is it going to help them, right? And this goes back to helping the customer too. How can you make them a hero by what they buy from you? So I think that is probably one of the biggest, and you don't need that all the time, right? Smaller deals don't necessarily have to tie back to that all the time.
Right.
But if you do, it makes it a lot easier, even if it's a smaller deal, because they can make themselves look good internally. And then when you drive success with that sort of proposal, you look like a hero with them. And then, that's a really good partnership for many years to come if you can do it that way.
And how about the government's typically either early adopter, like in the Intel space, or a laggard in most of the traditional, I don't know which agencies you sell to, and they have long-standing relationships and are probably keeping a lot of mainframe companies alive because changing is risky and expensive, two things the government doesn't like to do. How do you block out or edge your way in against those huge competitors?
You have to make sure you have something that I think is personally beneficial to the individual, right? So a lot of the things that we're talking about now specifically is, my role is we're talking about Splunk Cloud, which is basically Splunk as a service. So no longer running Splunk on your own, but consuming it from us. We run it all for you. And there are tough conversations to have there, because sometimes in government, people's daily lives are built on running Splunk. And so when you're trying to sell Splunk as a service, it's like, oh man, you're potentially taking away my job. So you have to really sort of be genuine and passionate to that individual who may be a blocker. Like, look, this job is not going to be there long term. The job that is going to be there is you going to the front side of the equation and getting value out of the data. So
Using
let
it.
me help. Yeah, let me help you retrain yourself to figure out how to use the data, and let's go, make you a superhero within your organization. So making it, personally about them and how it's beneficial to them, and then making it, again, tie back to that mission, in the government's case, but you got to make it personal, because if there's not a genuine win for that individual,
There's a loss.
there's a loss. So
Yeah.
should you even be doing it? Right. Exactly. So
Yeah. And what's the hardest part of your job?
I think not having control in this role.
Yeah.
I'm so used to being in control, being the rep that's the quarterback, and now I'm call it, the running back or the tight end who's kind of being told to run a play.
Yeah.
But it's been good. It's been healthy to sort of work on quality of life a little bit, for sure, in that regard. But also sort of just experience a different part of the team where I'm the tight end and not the quarterback. So there was an initial sort of, that loss of control was tough, but you figure it out, and you just play a really good running back or a really good tight end, and you make the team better if you do your job well.
And has it been an issue? Do you still live in Richmond? Is that
I
your
do.
home?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's a secondary city, and there's a couple of accounts down there, but most of it isn't there, right? Has that been an issue for you?
I was very lucky in that when I first joined Splunk, they took a gamble on me living down here,
Yeah.
because it was not in DC. Now, at that time, I was covering a much broader part of the East Coast, so I was kind of a little more central to getting down to South Florida or getting to Georgia or Raleigh, but as the years went on, the drive up to DC 2 hours, or Baltimore, 3 hours, can definitely be a little taxing. But I honestly, when I took the job, I said to myself, I said to my wife and to my kids, I said, look, I'd rather take the brunt of the work and let us have a really nice lifetime here. Because we moved from Northern Virginia, but it's about 25% cheaper down in Richmond.
Yeah.
And I was able to have, we were able to have a family. We had 2 more kids after I joined, and my wife is fortunate enough to sort of stay home with the kids, and she's just a phenomenal mom. But I sort of made that decision. I said, hey, I'm okay with that because it's going to be the best thing for my family. But it does get a little tiring, but you get used to it, man. You get up early, you beat the traffic, you come home a little late. It's kind of just part of the deal.
Yeah. Gives you plenty of time to listen to the the headspace,
to the podcast and to the headspace. That's right. a lot of audible books and podcasts, and then a lot of family calls too. Like, I'll kill time, and I have a big family, so extended family, I'll call and just catch up with them, which is, it's always nice keeping in touch with people that way.
Yeah. And traveling today, well, not just this year, but it's gotten so much easier. You get extra batteries for your phone and everything, chargers and stuff, and cell coverage is pretty consistent.
Yeah.
That didn't exist, even 5-10 years ago.
Yeah, true.
It was really
Very
sketchy.
true.
Well, what advice would you give like a junior rep on getting into, kind of a very sophisticated technology like Splunk that's also enterprise?
Stay curious. Ask a lot of questions and be coachable. I had great coaches, and who were very humble but super bright, and they took me under their wing because I was open to being coached, and I stayed humble, and so potentially I even lost some of that. I've definitely gained it back through my experience, but it's easy to lose it when you have a lot of success, and you read a lot about it now. It's like, man, that's the worst thing you can do, is lose some of your humility. So stay humble, stay coachable. I'm a big Yankees fan, so Derek Jeter had a great quote, I think, when he left, which is, I may not have been the best player on the field, but I was always the hardest worker. And that's sort of something I try to live by as well. I may not be the brightest bulb, but you're not going to outwork me. So stay a hard worker as well.
And on that caring thing, how do you know when you're caring too much? Or
I don't think you can, when you have a customer, I don't think you can care too much. I really don't, because I don't know. There's a, go ahead.
but let's say the customer needs or wants something and internally it's not working. You can kind of step on some eggshells, have sharp elbows.
Mm-hmm.
And if the caring pushes the emotion, it's like throwing the racket or yelling at the referee.
Yeah. Yeah. And I maybe got, that could have been another thing I got caught up in is, the changes that did happen were so different than when I first started. And so I was used to caring and getting things for the customer a certain way. And then we were being told you can't do that anymore. I'm like, what? Like throwing elbows potentially, So yeah, maybe it's like care to the point where you can still come up with a workable solution, even if it's not something you're used to doing in the past. Because I don't think anybody wants to screw the customer over necessarily. There's just a different way you got to do things potentially.
I guess you just got to catch yourself. Just refuse to do stupid stuff. Or let your emotions take it over.
That's probably better than stupid. Yeah, don't let your emotions take over. I agree. I agree. Continue to try to think rationally why the decision's being made.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, it's been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, pretty active, pretty active. I'm on LinkedIn. That's my only social media. I've kind of gotten off of all of it except for LinkedIn. So that's a great way to find me. And I appreciate you having me on, Brian. This is a great conversation. Again, I'm super, super flattered that you had me, and good luck with all you do.
Very much like empathy, interest, curiosity, caring, people get. And it builds trust, because when the client feels like you care more about them than about you and your commission check or the deal, they trust you. And trust becomes the bandwidth of communication. High trust, high bandwidth. Low trust, they don't believe anything you say. High trust, they're bought in. They're open. They tell you. They share with you the things that you would like to know, instead of us looking at the complex sale as a black box. Now, I had this recruiter that I was talking to the other day, and this is, I'll just say it, MedPick. Now, there's nothing wrong with MedPick. It's basically a checklist of the items of a deal, but it doesn't give any process. It implies that the client knows what their decision process is. People don't know what their decision process is. That's our job. When you bought a house, the realtor knows how to get the house transferred from the person who owns it now to you, and can help you get a mortgage, help you with the inspection, the insurance, the closing, all of that stuff. We have to know that. Our clients aren't professional decision makers. We are, or we should be. And we need to map that out. The exact steps, know where the traps are, how to keep direction, momentum, control over the deal. And that's what I teach. Because things like MedPick are great for forecasting, great for forecast integrity, forecast analysis, but it doesn't tell you how to sell. We're selling. And the client does not know how to buy. Procurement knows how to issue a purchase order. The end user knows what they want and like and can tell you the difference. But it's up to us to guide them through that process. And checking in and following up is not moving it along. It might nudge them to take some action, which was pretty much following up and checking in with someone else. And it's a lot of the blind leading the blind. One of the one-on-ones, if you're in the complex sales course, you got to check it out, because we kind of had this epiphany. And the question I always ask reps is, where do your deals get stuck? And a lot of people naturally can't answer that, because if they knew, they probably would have repaired it. But we have confirmation bias, which kind of keeps us in our comfort zone. What we're looking for is to confirm the way we view the world. And we have to be comfortable. And that's what confirmation bias gives us. The problem is it's never complete. It can't be, because everything changes. It's not static. It's dynamic. And what we got out of that one-on-one is, what I do is I walk the rep through. Okay, what's the first call look like? Then what do you do after that? What happens? And what do they ask for? And what do you want to do with them? And what I find is these little traps that we naturally fall into. And what's a trap? A trap is like you see something obvious and you want it. Think of a mouse trap. The mouse sees the cheese and says, wow, free cheese. And then all of a sudden eats the cheese and poof. In sales, we see traps all the time. Send me a quote. That sounds like a buying signal. It might be, or they might just be curious about the price. It's a big difference. Now, we all fall into these traps. More than half of our time is working on deals that will not close. And why would we do that? Because we think they're going to close. And winning the complex sale, what I do is I help you maneuver that, identify it, see what the game is that you're playing. And this is the type of thing that, processes like MedPick, it's not a methodology. It's simply a checklist of the things that you should be doing. Do you know them all? I don't know. Should you? Of course. But it doesn't tell you what to do next. It doesn't prevent you from falling into these traps. If it did, it would be magic, but it doesn't. We're playing a game that we're not really identifying the rules yet. We're not identifying the game board. What I do in that course is we map out your game board so that you can understand where you are, where you have to go next, and how do you get there, and identify the traps that you fall into, setting traps for your competitor, locking out your competitor, and most often the competitor's doing nothing. Think about all the things that you have perused or browsed for, shown some curiosity in, or maybe a little interest. Did you buy them all? No. I check out car sites all the time. Haven't bought a car in a long time. I'm curious. I may be even a little interested, but haven't bought it. Now, what's the other problem that everyone's facing today? Prospecting, and that's clearly the number one thing that reps are saying. I don't have leads. I don't have real deals. And that the old-fashioned prospecting techniques aren't working. Cold calling, cold emailing, even, spamming people on social isn't working because everyone's doing it. What a company's done, they hire a bunch of people with no sales experience to go prospect. And guess how they do it? Fast and brutally. And it's scorched the earth for the rest of us. So those old methods aren't working. But what does work is a human-to-human conversation. And how do you build that from nothing? It's not easy unless you know how to do it. And that's what I teach. And start the conversation, get the meeting. But check it out over at b2brevenue.com. There's no Black Friday sales or Cyber Monday. The price only goes up. It doesn't go down. So don't ask for deals. And don't be a tourist. Dig in. Be part of it. Show up for office hours. Schedule one-on-ones. Listen to the other ones. Hear how other reps are solving that problem. And let's win some deals. Make sure you're checking out the other shows, the Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers podcast, 7-day-a-week podcast where I answer your questions. So it's much more, if you like just the nuggets, the tips and tricks type stuff, that's the podcast for you. This show is really sharing what great reps are doing. These are all crowdsourced, recommended reps. And when you hear what makes up a great rep, you know where to start. You sharpen that saw so you become a little bit better every day. And if you see my stuff on LinkedIn, give it a little thumbs up, a little comment, a little share. I'd appreciate that. Tell a friend about the show, and we'll see you next time. about winning, eliminating your competitors, and getting the big deals done. This is for the people who really want to take their game to the next level. It pays for itself in the first deal. I bet within the first 3 months, it'll tenfold. If you really apply it over a year, it'll probably be 100x. It's up to you. How much energy and focus are you going to put into your game? Everybody wants to sit back and tell me the secret. Give me a tip. What do you do in this case? And it's like, okay, let's get into the game. You're all playing whether you admit it or not. If you sit in the bleachers and you look around, I don't know. You've got to get into the game. And the way to do it is to really see how the game is played before you get hit with the ball in the head. Most of us, we don't wake up until the soccer ball hits us in the head. You see that in the games. The kid was just standing there, boom, boom, right in the, I should do something. The natural traps that we fall into all the time in the complex sale are unavoidable. You have to prevent them, because once you're in them, repairing from them is really difficult. Winning the complex sale is a game changer, and the time to start is now. Go to b2brevenue.com, check it out. You get office hours, which is an hour meetup every other Friday. I always prepare a lesson. We talk about case studies. It's all recorded and put in the course. You never miss a thing. You get one-on-ones, 30-minute Zoom call with me, applying it to your particular situation. You get the core content, which helps you define and map out your sale. Find out where the traps are. Find out how to add direction, momentum, and control to your deals and close them. Instead of looking at it like a black box, checking in, dealing with one person, trying to understand why the CFO kicked it back, why legal isn't moving forward, how to get the board to approve it on the first go-around. We've gotten 7-figure deals through like magic with this course, and you get to hear the deal progression, get to see how they did it. What's better? And no one's judging you. No one knows who you are. No one knows what you're selling. No one cares. It's all about getting deals done, staying away from tips and tricks, and focusing on strategy. So make sure you check it out, b2brevenue.com. Make sure you listen to the other podcasts, Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, the B2B Revenue Leadership Show, and the Sales Leadership Show, my newest show. Get enough shows? Okay. If you see my stuff on LinkedIn, please give it a little thumbs up, a little like, a little comment, a little share. I'd appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.